Have you ever looked at someone in a position of power and thought, how on earth did they get there? It's a question that's plagued societies for centuries, and one that the infamous political philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli grappled with in his writings. His insights, though centuries old, offer a disturbing explanation for why the loudest voices often drown out the wisest minds. Machiavelli famously wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." This observation cuts to the heart of our modern leadership crisis. In boardrooms and political arenas alike, confidence is often mistaken for competence. The person who speaks with unwavering certainty, even if they're spouting nonsense, tends to command more attention and respect than the thoughtful expert weighing complex truths. But here's where it gets really interesting and a bit unsettling. Intelligence, that trait we're taught to value above all else, can actually be a handicap when it comes to gaining power. Think about it. Highly intelligent people tend to see nuance. They acknowledge uncertainty. They consider ethical implications. These are admirable qualities, but in cutthroat environments that reward simplicity and speed, they can be perceived as weakness. Consider the fate of Socrates, who openly admitted his ignorance and questioned everything. He was sentenced to death. Now compare that to the populist leaders throughout history who've gained power by offering absolute, often misleading answers to complex problems. Which approach seems to work better in the real world? This phenomenon isn't just anecdotal. A 2017 study found that intelligence helps with leadership effectiveness only up to a point. Beyond an IQ of about 120, additional brain power can actually hinder one's rise to the top. Why? Because it creates a disconnect between leaders and those they wish to influence. The average person doesn't want nuanced debate. They want certainty, even if it's an illusion. This brings us to a fascinating psychological quirk known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. People with low competence often overestimate their abilities, while true experts tend to underestimate theirs. It's why the loudest voice in the room isn't always the wisest, but it's often the one that gets heard. A 2020 study confirmed that we tend to perceive those who display certainty as more competent, even when they're objectively wrong. But it gets worse. Machiavelli warned that incompetent leaders often surround themselves with even less competent individuals to protect their status. He wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. This creates a cascading effect where loyalty is valued over talent and mediocrity becomes institutionalized." We've all seen this play out in politics and corporations alike. Weak leadership selecting for compliance and praise over innovation and skill. So why do we keep falling for this? Part of it comes down to our very human craving for certainty. In times of stress or uncertainty, we're drawn to simple answers like moths to a flame. Machiavelli recognized this long before modern psychology did, writing, "The great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances, as though they were realities." This helps explain why society so often chooses leaders who promise quick fixes and absolute solutions, even when those promises are clearly unrealistic. Studies show that when people feel threatened, their need for cognitive closure increases. They gravitate toward black and white thinking and become more open to authoritarian leadership. It's a vulnerability that manipulative individuals are all too happy to exploit. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Moral restraint can be a serious handicap in the quest for power. Intelligent, principled individuals often hesitate to use manipulative or unethical tactics. Machiavelli bluntly stated, "A prince must learn how not to be good." Those willing to deceive, exploit, or betray often have strategic advantages in power struggles. Unethical competitors can use any means necessary to rise, while their moral counterparts find themselves at a disadvantage. It's important to note that not all systems reward stupidity equally. Certain structural factors make it easier for incompetent people to rise. Weak feedback loops where failure isn't immediately apparent, lack of accountability in centralized systems, ambiguous metrics for success, misaligned incentives that prioritize short-term performance over long-term outcomes. Once in power, foolish or manipulative leaders use specific tactics to maintain control, creating tribalism and us versus them dynamics, keeping followers distracted with constant chaos and crisis. So, what can we do about this deeply unsettling reality? Machiavelli didn't promote these dynamics, he exposed them. To break the cycle, we need both individual awareness and institutional reforms. On a personal level, we must practice intellectual humility, acknowledging the limits of our knowledge. We need to build media literacy skills to separate spectacle from substance. And we must engage in philosophical reflection, taking time to examine deeper truths beyond the headlines. Systemically, we need to establish strong accountability mechanisms that reward truth and expose failure. We should foster cognitive diversity to challenge our blind spots. Transparency must be enforced to prevent secrecy and jargon from shielding incompetence. And perhaps most importantly, we need to prioritize ethics in education, teaching critical thinking and moral reasoning alongside practical skills. Machiavelli's work is often misinterpreted as a guide to manipulation. In reality, it was a mirror held up to human nature and the systems we build. He reminded us, it is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. By understanding how power really works and how it is often abused, we can start designing systems that favor competence, ethics, and truth. Understanding the darkness doesn't mean accepting it. It means gaining the clarity to build something better. The question is, are we willing to face these uncomfortable truths and do the hard work of changing our systems? Or will we continue to be seduced by the loudest voices, even when they lead us astray? What do you think? Have you seen examples of this dynamic play out in your own life or workplace? How can we as individuals resist the allure of false certainty and demand better from our leaders? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might just spark the change we need. And if you found this video thought-provoking, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the complexities of power, leadership, and human nature. Together, we can build a world where wisdom speaks louder than empty words.